Welcome back to Be Productive. As a productivity strategist, one of the things I talk about all the time is my clarity success method. And when we break down that word and get to the T stands for tracking and measuring. And this is what we're talking about today because you can gather all the information you want, but if you're not tracking the key areas and analyzing those areas, it's really going to be a challenge for you to level up and to be and work at the highest level of productivity. So, to help me with the discussion about tracking and accountability in your tracking is growth strategist Mark Wetzig. Mark, welcome to the show.
Good to see you. Good to be here.
Yes, you always bring so much value because, again, this is an area that you have been living in for well over 25 years. So, when it comes to really these growth strategies and knowing what, as business owners and leaders, we should be tracking, man, this is your area of genius. So, let's dive right in. What do you feel are the most important methods for effective tracking, in order for us to progress and grow our businesses?
Well, the traditional method is really, what we refer to as KPIs, key performance indicators, and those are numbers. Those are non-financial numbers. They're tracking levels of activity. Very often they're tracking ratios because a lot of business is really driven on ratios. I have discussions with people. It's a numbers business. I said, no, it's really a ratios business because you're measuring against some kind of optimized measurement out there. But in addition to that, there's something called outcomes and key results, OKRs, and those are targets because you can have your financial targets, you can have your operational targets, but the business is more than that. The business is actually results. You want to reach a certain presence in the marketplace. You want to have you're trying to establish maybe growth patterns for a number of people in your company. You're trying to capture, there's always different kinds of goals out there that are more non-financial. So you've got to be able to track those. And what we say is you can't have a business if you don't have a target, because the numbers are one thing, but if your target, just as they say, target market, what is your target market? Are you hitting it? How well are you hitting it? Should there be more than one target market? And then also operationally, are you growing at the levels that you want and that you expect that you should be? Do you have enough people to cover the complexity of your operation? So those are things that aren't necessarily numbers and financially driven. And that's one thing that we do at the very beginning of the process when we're talking to people is, not only, yes, there are numbers and what do you want to attain there, but what are the targets that you're really going after and what are you really looking for? With the advent of AI, that's really helped with being able to build more of a story, more of an operational plan that you get into where you build those targets into your plan. So it's not just a static plan, it's something with your information and your targets built into the plan. So it's personalized. And one of the beauties about AI is that you have the capability of being able to do that. So it's not just a process or a system, it's theirs. It's very personalized.
That's so good. And again, I think that we have to approach it that way. And this is why I love having somebody like you on the show, because every company is different and they're going to have different KPIs that we need to be looking at. And again, it's not just a cookie cutter approach. Now, in tracking, and I see this a lot too with people that I work with, they'll tell me, oh, I tracked last month or I tracked, a little bit last week. The beauty of tracking is also in the consistency of it. So, how
Correct.
do you help your clients ensure accountability so that they can stay consistent with their tracking? Because the numbers don't lie, but if we don't have consistent numbers, we're not going to get accurate information.
This starts to come in under the topic of change management, which I think you're certainly aware, and anybody who's been in companies where you're trying to make changes, at sooner or later you're going to deal with change management. And one of the biggest challenges with change management is the old accountability factor. So one of the things that I implore in that is that you have to start with habits. I mean, and there's a bunch of different material out there about habit building and so forth, but that ultimately is what um, change management is about, is kind of making small adjustments in your habits on a daily basis, that then reflect into changes in activity and accountability. One of the things that I get into, most of my clients I'll deal with on a weekly basis. Might be brief, might be maybe 15 minutes or so, but that consistency there, you're talking about that consistency. I don't like long drawn out meetings, because you have a tendency, like a lot of meetings in person, where you'll drift off in one subject or the other. Compressing your time into, say, 20 or 25 minutes gets things to the point. Let's deal with the things that are most relevant. What does that force? That forces people to be accountable. You have to be accountable. Here's the 3 things that we're going to cover next week. Because in addition to coaching people through a process, I want to facilitate that next step so that there's momentum. Because if you start building momentum with people and they see progress with numbers, they see progress financially, typically the accountability starts to come into line there, because there's an incentive. They see it and they want more. They see it and they want more. So that's one thing that I really work on with accountability, is if you have to really start coaching people through accountability, that's tough. So it's one of those things that really needs to evolve and grow as the business is going and changing. And it's something I addressed from the very start, is accountability is probably going to, pop its head up at some point in time. Let's understand what that's going to look like so that we can address it sooner than later.
Definitely. So let's talk more about, this idea of getting someone like you, a business coach, a strategist, someone to really be in your corner. What role do you find, that a business coach can really play in both monitoring and guiding your clients' progress towards their results?
First of all, clarifying upfront, clarifying what the overall plan is so that there's consensus, there's agreement. They're not, the owner's not heading off on one track and you think they're heading off on another one. So it's constantly checking that we're, proverbial on the same page. But then also confirming and then celebrating accomplishments. This is good. One thing I do that a lot of people don't do is I want to understand what they're good at to begin with, because there's a reason that they got into business and they've reached a certain level of success. A lot of coaching people start to think, let's fix what's broken. I say possibly, but let's build on what works. And if something worked in one area of the business, can it work in another area of the business? So again, it's that momentum. You want to keep momentum. So it's celebrating successes, and as we've talked about before, course correcting sooner than later, but then also facilitating whatever that next step is going to be. Here's what you need to be aware of. So we have things going. It's tough to multitask, and you really have to focus. Business owners get stuck in that, where they're trying to multitask and then nothing gets done really in the end of the day. So it's, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, focus here and there, focus on this, focus on that, because that helps with being able to facilitate their week to week, day to day, and then week to week progress with things. And again, try to stay concise on everything.
Yeah. And what I really try to impart, with so many of the people that I coach, that I train, that I lead and speak to, is the value of a coach. I'm a coach, you're a coach. I have coaches too, because again, they really do. And I think it's that idea of, again, the guiding, the monitoring, and really helping to make sure we're going down the right path. Because you're right, some things work. And if they work, a good coach is going to help you leverage that in other areas. And if things are not working, a good coach is going to help you analyze why it's not working so that you can either adjust it, pivot, or possibly go down a different way. So, Mark, you have really been doing this for so long, and you've helped so many companies be able to bring these ideas into play. I know that there's going to be people out there that are going to want to, pick your brain a little bit more. They may want to find you. And I know on your website, you have some free resources in addition to information on just working with you. So tell us a little bit about where people can find you and some of the things that they can access on your website.
Sure. My website is reignitegrowthcoach.com. And in that website, there's a lot of information there. But one of the things, as you scroll down just a little bit in the middle of the website, is a link to a book that I wrote. It's on 12 growth strategies. So it's really an outline of how to drive business, all the different aspects of sales and marketing, and what it can do for your business. It's not necessarily a how-to, it's how it can really impact your business. So it's really things to think about, and it's useful not only to see that at the very beginning of the process, but also referred to as you keep going on. Then secondly, my email address is markw@reignitegrowthcoach.com. And then my cell and text number is 303-921-3440.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, Mark, thanks again for sharing so much knowledge and wisdom. And for those of you watching, remember, you can do the work, but if you don't track it, you're not going to know what's working and what's not working. So make sure that you are staying consistent, that you are holding yourself accountable, and maybe even looking into getting some help with a strategic coach like Mark, like me, like others that are out there. Because when you start to track and you start to gain the information, that's what's going to help you work at your highest level, and that's what's going to help you be productive. So stay tuned. We'll be right back for more.